Hey guys, welcome along to Sceam Me Up Botty. I am your host, Rodney Stewart. Star Trek, the original series, Season 2, Episode 2, Who Mourns for Adonais. This here, probably not one of the strongest episodes in the run of Star Trek. I'm not even sure of the reception that this got whenever it first came out, but the AV Club gave the episode a C plus rating, noting that it was occasionally memorable, but undone by lazy scripting and bizarre dialogue. I can kind of see that, but the episode itself, interesting, and one of the funniest stories I can recall from childhood. Well, not even childhood. You're talking teenage days. I remember back whenever I was a teenager in the 90s, being a fan of science fiction wasn't the coolest thing, let's just say. There was always some person in your friend group that would give you serious abuse for being into this sort of stuff back in the day, and one of these guys was getting at us. There's a few of us were real science fiction nerds, let's just say. We never missed Star Trek, whatever it was on, like at that stage, you had Next Generation was still on the go, DS9, all that sort of stuff was, and it was on, we were watching it, we were chatting about it, and you always had these guys that were too cool for school, let's just say, and they were giving you crap about it. And I remember in particular this episode here came up in conversation one night, and this guy was at us, and he was like, that is a terrible, terrible show. The special effects on it are crap. And, made in the 60s and whatnot, this was before the visual effects have been updated now to give it a little bit more of a new feel to it. But the original visual effects, this guy, he was going on about, and it made him look so flippin' stupid, because he was going on about Star Trek, and he didn't call out this episode in particular, but he says the visual effects are so bad on those shows that they didn't even bother taking out a hand holding the ship. And this is the episode the guy was referring to. And eventually it came out that, that this was actually what he was talking about. And he says, like, the visual effects are so bad that you actually see this hand carrying the ship across the screen going, "Yee." And I'm like, idiot, that wasn't a mistake. That's the actual effect. You have this character of Apollo on here, being the Greek god Apollo, and the hand, the force that grabs the ship at the beginning is actually his hand. And he goes, no, that wasn't. And this guy was adamant that that wasn't the case, that this was a stupid visual effect where they're just like, they've got a black background with stars and a little planet on there, and this guy's hands holding the ship, and it just looks so fucking fake. And I'm like, in all fairness, the effect in the episode doesn't look amazing, and even in the upgraded version of it, still doesn't look that great. But the fact of the matter is, the giant hand was supposed to be there, and that is what the actual effect was. But you always had these idiots back in the day that were giving you shit about this sort of thing. It is what it is. We grew up whenever it wasn't cool to be fans of this sort of stuff. Now these days, it is, the nerds are actually running the planet these days, and it's not just as a taboo a subject as it was back then. But these guys were like, oh, big hand in space, holding it, instead of just taking the hand out so you can see the ship moving on its own. I'm like, yeah, dickhead, think what you want, it is what it is. But the episode itself, as I say, not that strong, but it is what it is. It's Star Trek. It has its place in the series, and I enjoy this episode for the most part. Again, not the strongest one, but the basic plot of the story is Enterprise is out doing its thing, and this huge energy field in the shape of a glowing green hand appears and grabs the Enterprise, holding it on the spot, not letting it move. Kirk and the crew, of course, try to shake the ship free, but every attempt fails, and a humanoid apparition appears in the bridge view screen and addresses the crew. Kirk demands that the ship be set free, of course, but the being responds by tightening the grip of the hand, and he's threatening to crush the ship completely unless Kirk agrees to its demands that the ship's crew be beamed down to the planet's surface. So, of course, Kirk is down with the land party. They have Carolyn Palamas with them. I think I pronounced that surname right. We'll just refer to her as Caroline in this episode, played by Leslie Parrish. Fairly good in the episode. The speciality she has includes Greek mythology. The team arrives at what appears to be an ancient Greek temple. There they encounter this humanoid who identifies himself as the Greek god Apollo, played by Michael Forrest. Now, he is pretty decent in this role. He informs them that the party, that he has... my words are not working tonight. So Apollo tells them that he's not going to allow them to leave, and he renders the communicators, the transporters, non-functional so they can't leave, and he indicates that he expects the crew of the Enterprise to worship him as their ancestor did, and in return promises to provide for all their needs and desires. Of course, what the hell is wrong with my words tonight? I don't England very well. Kirk refuses, of course. He's not going to lie down to this. Apollo's attention shifts to Caroline. This angers Mr. Scott, as he's been trying to pursue her romantically, let's just say. He steps forward to defend her against the advances of Apollo, and Apollo destroys his phaser and announces that he will take Caroline as his consort. After displaying his power, Apollo appears tired and vanishes along with Caroline. When I say vanishes, he doesn't just bugger off, they disappear. Kirk and McCoy speculate that Apollo was one of a group of powerful aliens that visited Earth a millennia ago and became objects of worship of the ancient Greeks. Chekhov, having noticed Apollo's fatigue, plans to provoke Apollo. He tells Kirk, this guy uses his power, he gets tired, this is probably a way of getting around him and getting away from him. So Kirk plans to provoke Apollo to test the limits of his power and allow the land party to overcome him. Meanwhile, Caroline learns that Apollo belonged to a group of travellers who, they exist on love and worship. He's the last of their kind, and the others haven't faded away over the eons, moved on to the next level or whatever. So Kirk's plan to provoke Apollo is not going well when Caroline intervenes to protect the land party. Apollo instructs Kirk to begin making arrangements for the remaining crew to come down to the planet. Kirk, he then takes Caroline aside and tells her that she must reject Apollo to save them from slavery, reminding her, you're Starfleet, this is your job, this is what you're here to do. Your personal feelings don't come into it. You have to do what's right for everyone else around you. Starfleet code and all that. Meanwhile, Mr. Spock locates the power source for the Force lightning hold in the Enterprise and finds a way to communicate and get the Enterprise to fire phasers through it. Forced to prioritise responsibility over romantic desire, Caroline, heartbroken, lies through her teeth, and she tells Apollo that her interest in him is purely scientific, and she likens him to a new strain of bacteria. She's just, as I say, she's lying. She's got strong feelings for this guy, this Apollo, whatever he is, whether he's a Greek god or some sort of higher alien Uh, just she's hurting his feelings. Apollo invokes a thunderstorm while Kirk orders Spock to fire on and destroy the power source. They're close, but Kirk is, do it now, has to be done now. So they destroy this temple, which is the source of the power that this person slash Greek god Apollo was using. And at the end of the episode, Apollo addresses his fellow gods, admitting that he was wrong and begging to join them, and he fades away. And that's the end of the episode. Caroline is distraught, of course, and Kirk notes that humans owe their moral code to the Greek civilization and mythology. And, he regrets having to destroy Apollo along with McCoy. Isn't happy about it either. But it is what it is. Fairly decent episode. As I say now, not the strongest, and I did say the reception that I looked up here, there's not much in the way of reception online here. The AV Club, giving it the C+ rating. Yeah, it's hugely memorable, but undone by lazy scripting and bizarre dialogue. I don't think the dialogue was that bizarre. This character is supposed to be a Greek god at the end of the day, and the way he talks is the way you would expect it to happen. So, yeah, I don't think there's much else to be said here. There's something interesting. This episode featured in the 2016 film X-Men Apocalypse, shown playing on a TV in the mutant Storm's apartment. The film features an ancient mutant who once worshipped as a god who seeks to return to power, mirroring the plot of the episode. I didn't know that, so there you go. There's some new information for me and you as well in this episode. So, yeah. The other thing that's going on at the moment as far as Star Trek goes, like this podcast here is going to be Star Trek heavy. Eventually we will branch out into other shows and material, whether it be new stuff or classic stuff. For me, I like the science fiction from the 60s, 70s, 80s and 90s and the early 2000s. Like, all good stuff through there. That's why we're starting off with Star Trek in this episode, or this podcast. The thing that's going on at the minute with Star Trek in particular seems to be up in the air. I've been seeing a lot of stuff online. I don't really want to comment on it myself at this point until we get the real story, but Star Trek Academy has been cancelled after one series, and a lot of the stuff I'm seeing at the moment is there's a lot of talk about cast members from the original series right through to the next generation up in arms about the way Star Trek is going now, and a lot of kickback against the woke material, let's just say, that Star Trek has been doing in recent years. Now, if you have been following this podcast from the very, very beginning, I was uploading content to the podcast. I wasn't just doing the original series, I was jumping from the classic shows to new shows as well. So I was putting out episodes with Star Trek Picard, and what else was there? Discovery. I was putting out episodes about Discovery as well. But, in my mind, I was starting to see where new Star Trek was going, and I was going to be bouncing off the classic stuff as well. So, I'm not going to lie to you, I'm not the most well versed in all of Star Trek history. Like, the DS9 is a black spot for me as far as my knowledge of some of the stuff goes. So I do know one of the big complaints I heard about Star Trek Starfleet Academy was it had a character on it. Now, I can't say this for definite. I need to watch the old show just to get it right. But some guy was online and he was saying there was a character in there. I can't recall what race of aliens they came from. But his big thing was, this was a female character from this race of aliens, but that race of aliens in Star Trek was a clone race essentially, and they were all male, so there was no female versions. There's no females of this alien race, but in Starfleet Academy apparently there was a female in it. So I didn't want to keep going doing the newer stuff and reviewing that and talking about it without having a full understanding of what came before. That's why I'm going chronologically with the series. But it is what it is. Like, I will hands up right now. Star Trek, the new Star Trek stuff, definitely hasn't been doing it right for a while now, and I've been noticing little bits and pieces in there that were just like, too woke for its own good. You know what I mean? I'm all for a little bit of social commentary with science fiction, and Star Trek has had that from day one, and it has always done it in a way that's not ramming it down anybody's throat. It's having a social commentary on some things, but it's doing it intelligently through good writing and good acting. And for me, new Star Trek has been, it has been lacking in a lot of really good storytelling, and things were just put in there and just like ramming it down your throat and getting preachy. And as I say, classic Star Trek was able to do that sort of stuff without it being preachy, without shoving it down your throat and whatnot. So we're going to go chronologically here. We're going to cover all that sort of stuff, the way it was done back then compared to how it has been done in the newer stuff. So it's going to take a long time to get there. This podcast, if I can keep it going the way I want it to go, 5 episodes a week, I have been dropping off badly in the last couple of months, but we'll go as good as we can go with the episodes. So this hasn't been, I know for a fact, I'm listening to myself recording this hasn't been the best podcast, but it is what it is. And hopefully my use of the English language will be a little bit better in the next episode. So until then, guys, stay safe, and I will talk to you in the next one. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.